President, may I inquire, are we in morning business at this point?
We are on the message to accompany H.R. 1735.
Madam President, I would ask unanimous consent to speak as if in morning business.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Madam President, I come down here every week. As you know, you're usually in the chair when I'm here, listening to my waste of the week. A little bit later this week than we normally do, but the issue of waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government continues. We've covered a lot of ground, from serious issues such as tax fraud and misplaced death records to the more absurd, such as the federally funded rabbit massages and marketing support for pumpkin donuts. Each of those have a price tag, and that price tag is paid for by the American taxpayer. I'm happy today to be able to announce that one of the items which I highlighted in a previous Waste of the Week speech has been addressed. In May, my 11th Waste of the Week speech examined ways to improve compliance measures for higher education tax benefits. I outlined how Congress, if it could fix this problem, achieve $576 million of taxpayer savings. And so that's the former Waste of the Week. But now I'm bringing forward a separate one. I might just point out that this was of great benefit to universities and colleges and educational institutions across the country because it required them to provide compliances even when those applying for the particular aid refused to provide certain information. And it created a nightmare of paperwork and a nightmare of compliance for these colleges and universities. And so that provision that we brought forward was incorporated in law that has now been passed, signed by the President, and is operative. And we not only have saved the taxpayer $576 million, we've provided universities relief from an unnecessary procedure that had consumed an extraordinary amount of time. Today I want to talk about software licenses. If the federal government needs to obviously purchase literally millions of these devices in order to get the IT, the information technology processing through the computers and everything we do along this line, to get those working right, you have to have the right equipment. And in fact, the government spent last year $80 billion on information technology, including these software licenses. Now, the Office of Management and Budget and the 24 federal agencies that are covered by the Chief Financial Officers Act of 1990 have very key roles and responsibilities for overseeing IT investment management. Federal law places responsibility for managing investment with the heads of these agencies and establishes chief information officers to advise and assist agency heads in carrying out this responsibility. Now, there are two executive orders that have been issued that provide information for these federal agencies regarding the management of how they go about procuring and managing these software licenses. Executive Order 13103 specifies that agencies must adopt procedures to ensure that they are not using this computer software in violation of copyright laws. And additionally, Executive Order 13589 states that agencies must ensure they're not paying for unused or underutilized IT adequate policies, IT equipment, software, and services. Now, the Government Accountability Office has conducted a study and evaluation of how well this is being managed and implemented. And what they found is, in many, many cases, it is not happening. Specifically, the General Accounting Office found that the Office of Management and Budget and the vast majority of federal agencies lacked adequate policies for managing their software licenses. Of the 24 major federal agencies that I had mentioned before, only two out of 24 had comprehensive policies included that included the establishment of clear roles in central oversight authority by managing enterprise software license agreements. Only 2 out of 24 have lived up to their requirement to manage in the way that these executive orders have ordered. An additional 18 agencies had some type of policy in place, but the Accountability Office determined that this simply was not comprehensive enough and effective enough. And 4 agencies were found that had no policy at all. They totally ignored the mandates of the executive orders. So these weaknesses in the system result from principally a lack of priority in establishing software license management. Now, this is kind of a technical thing, and I certainly admit that I'm not fully comprehensive in terms of how all this IT stuff needs to work. But we hire people who are talented and have the skills necessary to oversee this kind of management. And the key here is that the result of not effectively managing this has racked up a cost estimated at $10 billion or more each year that can be saved, and particularly over a 10-year period of time. Actually, it's $10 billion over a 10-year period of time. And so just complying with the executive orders, complying with the procedures that are done by every business in America, but the federal government has not complied with the necessary steps to achieve the right kind of management and oversight, is costing the taxpayer up to $10 billion. So today, we add more to our ever-increasing amount of waste, fraud, and abuse that has been found within the federal system, and we are moving toward our goal of $100 billion. There will be more wastes of the week in the future, and we hope to reach that $100 billion before we leave here for the August recess. We have 3 more weeks before that happens. At that point, we're way ahead of schedule. We had hoped to reach the $100 billion by the end of this Congress, but we have determined and found so many examples of waste, fraud, and abuse that our gauge here is climbing much faster than we thought that it would. Look, we have major fiscal problems in this country. It's going to take major decisions relative to how we structure how we spend taxpayers' money. We have had numerous efforts to deal with this in a macro way. All of those have come up short. I have now turned my attention, and while I was engaged in all that before, I have turned my attention to, well, let's see at least if we can't find some savings for the taxpayer in the areas of waste, fraud, and abuse, and document it. I'm pleased, as I said at the beginning of my remarks here, that one of those has just been implemented, saving the taxpayer $576 million and saving our colleges and universities and institutions of higher education a nightmare of paperwork and compliance requirements that they will no longer have to do and engage in. So we will continue, and we will do some serious issues. We will look at some absurd things that would cause people to say, why in the world will we ever spend that money in the first place? It's just not responsible leadership in governing.